to work through this video, you'll need a calculator. So you may want to pause the video and go find your calculator, bring it back, and then continue the viewing. What we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be looking at being able to answer questions like this. What number can we square that gives us 25? Well, that one we can probably answer, right? It's one that we're, I hope, relatively familiar with. 5 squared, because remember, to square a number means to multiply it times itself. 5 squared would give us 25. How about this one? How about answering this question, filling in this blank? What number can you square that makes 81? Again, I think you probably know this one. 9 times 9, 9 squared, gives us 81. Well, now, what about filling in this blank? What about answering this question? What can we square that makes 144? That one might be a little more difficult. We may not know this one as easily as we knew the other two. Well, that's where we could use our calculator, couldn't we? We know that it has to be a number bigger than 9, so we could just start checking some of the numbers larger than 9 and squaring them. So we could take 10 times 10. If you did that with your calculator, you'd find that's 100. If you took 11 times 11, multiply those, you find that that answer is 121. And 12 times 12, oh, there's our answer. 12 times 12, 12 squared is 144. Well, that's probably not a very efficient way to find out the answer to questions like this. And by that I mean trying to use our calculator and working our way up. That would be especially true if we had something like this. We wanted to know what number we could square that would give us 324. Or what number could you square that would give you 625? We may have to work our way up through quite a few whole numbers, if indeed the answer is a whole number. For example, what number can we square that gives us 20? Well, let's think about that. We know from one of the problems we just looked at that 5 squared is 25. So this number has to be less than 5. But 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. So the number that we can square that makes 20 is not a whole number. There are no whole numbers between 4 and 5, and 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. The number must be a decimal number. It must not be a whole number. Now, the question is, how would we figure that out? Even if the answers to these problems were whole numbers, the answer to this problem is not a whole number. There's no whole number we can square that makes 20. Well, fortunately, our calculators have a function that can enable us to answer this question. And also to be able to answer questions like this, even when the numbers are larger. Let's look at that function. The function that enables us to answer that question is called the square root function. On your calculator, you should see a key that has a symbol that looks like this. This function, called the square root function, enables us to answer this question. The square root of 20 would be the number that we can square that makes 20. So when you need to answer this question, what can I square that makes a number? For example, 20. You can use your calculator to find the square root of 20. And the square root of 20 fills in the blank. So take your calculator, put 20 into the display, hit the square root symbol. And you'll notice that's a decimal value. My calculator displays 4.4721359. So it's not an exact decimal. It's a decimal number that seems to continue on without terminating, as some decimal numbers do. So if we wanted to approximate, and that's what we end up having to do with a square root, like the square root of 20, what number can we square that would make 20? We have to just get an approximation. If we were going to approximate this, say to the nearest hundredth, that would be 4.47, 4 and 47 hundredths. So the answer, what number can we square that gives us 20? An approximate answer to that is 4.47. So the square root of 20 is 4 and 47 hundredths rounded to the nearest hundredth. Now let's see how good of an approximation that is. Clear your display, put in 4.47 times 4.47 and hit your equal sign. What answer did you get? On my display, I got the answer 19.9809. Is that exactly 20? Is the square of 4.47 exactly 20? No, because we approximated what that number would be. When we used our square root function, we took an approximation, rounded to the nearest hundredth. So we wouldn't expect that if we squared 4 and 47 hundredths, we would get exactly 20. But we get a very close approximation. And that's what happens when you're working with square roots, when you're looking to find numbers that you can square that aren't going to be whole numbers. Let's look at a couple of those other examples.